Welcome, everyone, to Los Libertinos podcast. I am your host, Carlos Abelar, and this is Chingasos and Fire, episode number 17. Our guests today are Matt and Amy Erickson. They are the Kingpilled couple based out of California. Both are integral operators of a well-known podcast that you guys might know, Wealth, Power, and Influence with Jason Stapleton. Matt is a co-host on that podcast, and while Amy is the happen maker that deals with the day-to-day operations of that business. Matt is also the host of the Kingpilled podcast, and he has a co-host, Steven, but he also has other guests come on sometimes. And both are parents to a big baby boy named Eastwood. Thank you guys for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, buddy.
So for a while, for the last couple of months, I had been reaching out to Matt to interview him about Kingpilled, about the other, the podcast that he has with Jason, and just to interview him. But we had never got in sync to be able to get together. And
was this your first time on?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So like 2 or 3 weeks ago, on his podcast, he basically, him and his co-host, they freestyle a little bit while they wait for guests to come on. And on one of those freestyles, he had mentioned how he kind of thought that, or the feeling that I got was that he thought that when he attends football matches, there's a little bit of I wouldn't say religious, but there is like a tradition in the environment there. And I thought, oh man, that's cool. I know they go to games, and that's pretty dope. And then just thinking my normal way, like, oh, he must have liked it since he was a kid, and he never, he always liked it and all that. And then he had mentioned, and he was like, yeah, my wife Amy was the one that got me into it. And then real fast, I said, oh, you know what, I got to talk to both of them because I need to find out who wears the number 10 in this relationship. But before we get into all of that, a lot of the people in my audience would not know who you are. Some might. A lot of them might not. Are my primos, cousins, and tios. So can you guys kind of give a little bit of individual backgrounds, and then kind of how you guys met, got together, and how you guys decided to take this ride of life together, and kind of give a little bit also how Matt proposed this to you, Amy, because it's a big deal for a man to propose to his future wife that he wants to row together.
So I was raised in Washington State. I was born in Reno, but I was raised in Washington State, and I was raised in a very conservative religious family, a Protestant denomination, Seventh-day Adventists, if you guys are familiar with them. Very conservative. And I grew up that way. I went to an academy, a church academy that was up in Canada that was also very, very conservative. And we're talking like there's no mixed swimming, and you weren't allowed to have headphones on campus because all the music that you brought on campus had to be approved, and I couldn't have any drums in it. And
like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like guys weren't allowed to wear sleeveless shirts. It was very, very conservative. So that was kind of the vibe that I grew up under. And then I ended up going to a church college as well, Walla Walla University in Eastern Washington. And it was for within the denomination, it's much more, it's seen as kind of like the apostate college. It's like where all the people who have backslidden from the religion, they all go to that college. And and over the course of the next probably 4 or 5 years there, while I was there, that's exactly what happened. I just kind of started backsliding away from the church, and I spent most of my 20s just kind of wandering a little bit. I ended up having to drop out of college because I ran out of money, and I worked some sales jobs. I sold cars. I worked for a moving company, drove a truck for a moving company, and lugged couches around. And I was just kind of trying to find my way, I guess. And it was in the middle of that I'd kind of gotten focused. I was really honed in on kind of the direction that I wanted to head. I was realizing that I was getting a little just kind of drifting, and I'd actually committed to myself that I wasn't I was not going to get into any relationships. I was just going to go solo, ride solo for a while, and just
men going their own way.
Yeah. And it was several weeks after I'd like made that decision and was really focused, that this podcast I was listening to, I was part of the support, the listeners group for the podcast on Facebook. And there was this hot chick that was very, very active in that podcast and in that group. And she wound up, we ended up adding each other as friends on Facebook. And then she posted a video one day of a little girl, a little toddler, who was like running around in a store and just walking up to people and putting her arms up and giving them hugs. And it was just very sweet and cute and all that. And I commented on it. I can't remember exactly what I said, something along the lines of, I'll take one. And so we started going back and forth. And I remember exactly where I was. I was in downtown Seattle, going up and down an elevator in an apartment complex, lugging couches up and everything. And so like I would load everything onto the elevator, and then I'd be like crammed back into a corner of it, reaching up. I'd push the button, and then I'd be there, and I'd pull my phone out, and I'd sit here, and I'd on the way up the elevator, and I was messaging back and forth with her, and on Facebook, and then just out of nowhere on the comment thread, she just posts her phone number, and so I copied it and I sent a text. The first thing I said was, "Did you just post your phone number on Facebook?" and she was like, "It worked, didn't it?" And from then on, we started talking. We hit it off immediately. And so I was living in Seattle, and she was down here in Southern California. She was in LA. She's born and raised in out east of LA. And so I guess fast forward, she moved up to Washington, and we got married. We were up there for a couple of years, and we got married. I was on his insurance at work. And so we knew by the end of the year we had to get married. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
We knew we had to get married by the end of the year, or else we would be in trouble. And because I didn't have health insurance when I moved up there. And then we were talking to my mom, and this is early in the year, and she told us that my grandparents, my great grandparents, and my aunt and uncle all got married on Memorial Day weekend. We're like, all right, well, there's our wedding date.
So it just kind of, it worked out. Like we'd known that we were going to get married, but the actual arranging the actual timing of it and everything was kind of like that. It was like, we're going to get married. We were already like, this was for life at that point. And so then it was both of those things kind of worked out just right. We got married on Memorial Day weekend, May 27th of, was it 2018? 18, yeah. And yeah, so then we ended up moving back down here to LA because the podcast that I was listening to, there was the Facebook group that I met her. That was the podcast that I'm actually the co-host of now, Wealth, Power, and Influence with Jason Stapleton. At the time, it was the Jason Stapleton program. And so we moved down here because she'd started working for Jason. First, she was just kind of managing his Facebook group for him. And she proved herself worthy and dependable for that. And so she got a promotion to the next level up and just kind of kept doing that. She just kept on taking everything that he threw at her. And while she's working full time as well. And so eventually he was like, I need someone I can trust that I can pay to do some more stuff for me. And we were both wanting to get out of Washington. She was not a fan of it in the first place. And I'd been spending my entire life trying to get away from there. So we wound up moving down to LA. And so she could work with Jason in person. And at the same time, he was kind of going through a transitionary period with his own podcast, and he was needing a co-host. So I needed something to do. He needed a co-host. It was kind of a match made in heaven. So I did a couple of episodes with him, and we got really good feedback, and he and I got along well. And we were very, very different, but we also are very similar in a lot of ways. And so we end up complimenting each other, even though there's been times where we've been pretty, like he and I will very vehemently disagree about stuff, and we've gotten into it on the air. And it's very real, because it's just a real disagreement that people have commented that we can tell you guys aren't just performing, that you genuinely disagree on these major issues of philosophy or politics or law or whatever. And yet we're able to kind of have it out. And then at the end of the day, we end the podcast, we stop the recording, and it's right back to normal everyday work. It's just very natural. So that's how we wound up in LA. And we've now been, we actually ended up moving out. We're east of LA now, kind of out in the desert. And that's where we moved to have our little man. When we knew he was coming, we wanted to get out of the city.
Yeah. And
wanted him to have a house.
Yeah. And Amy, what's a little bit of your background, your personal background?
I grew up very different from Matt. Still more socially conservative, but we grew up socially Lutheran. Thank you. I was blanking on the word. So we went to church every once in a while, and I went to, Lutheran private school for a while, and then public school. So I was a public school kid. He was a homeschool kid. Went to college, never finished, got really into soccer. I got into soccer in like 8th grade. Then spent 10 years working with kids with special needs before moving to Washington, did that there, started working for Jason. Then we're here. And this whole background story, like the telling of the background stories, is very much kind of indicative of us, where Matt is very long-winded and lots of details. And I'm like, here's what we did. Here's what we're doing. That's it.
Yep.
Good. Interview over.
All right. So yeah, I'll try to incorporate those styles into the interview. But so yeah. So then the first question was that was the background, but the first question I wanted to ask, because it was the beginning of why I kind of wanted to get both of you guys on, was the football question, which was that you introduced it to him. Mm-hmm. And how did that go about? Because most people that I know, once they get away from football, because maybe most kids play when they're small, just because it's the beginner sport, everybody, kick the ball around or whatever. And they fade away from it. And it's hard to get them back as adults. And then for them to stay, how did the introducing of football go? Was it just, hey, let's go to a game, or was it, there's something else to it? Can you kind of talk a little bit about that, Amy?
We were long distance for, almost a year. I think we were long distance for 11 months. And then I've been a Galaxy fan, so LA Galaxy, since 1998. I've got like a full Galaxy tattoo and US soccer tattoo actually as well. And I think I just talked about it a lot, and he had gone to Sounders games.
I grew up very, very much into sports. I grew up just an absolute rabid baseball fan, had a huge baseball collection. My parents tell stories about me being out in the backyard, and I would like write out the entire lineup for the game. I'd sit and listen to the game on the radio, and then I'd write the lineup out, copy it from the newspaper, and I'd run outside and I would reenact every part of the game. Just by myself. I was an only child, so just by myself reenacting every part of the game. And so I played baseball. I was a pitcher, and I was actually there came a point where I was homeschooled, but I was 14 the last year that I played, and I was a pitcher, and I was one of the best pitchers in our county or our region. And so I had to make a decision, like, am I going to really pursue baseball and start and get kind of connected with one of the local high schools and start, I was right at the edge of the area where like Major League Scouts would kind of be started, like that age and that kind of venue. So I was trying to decide, am I going to go the route of really pursuing baseball as a career, or am I going to be a lot more serious about my religious beliefs? And that's why I wound up going to the high school that I did up in Canada. So that was kind of a major point for me. But then all the way throughout my 20s, I was very much into sports. I did a little bit of writing for a couple of websites on the NFL draft. I went and attended the NFL draft several years ago, and kind of built up a bit of a background as a sort of like an amateur scout for the NFL. And then I was a really regular contributor on a couple of baseball blogs as well. So I was very much into sports. I brought a very kind of like obsessive personality. When I get into a sport, when I get into a team or a specific sport, I'm just obsessive. I want to know every single thing. I want to understand all the strategies, all the positions, all the statistics. I'm very much into like advanced statistics in baseball and all that. Like I was always at the kind of the forefront of those things. So when she started talking about soccer, I was kind of like, okay, I was the guy who'd always made the jokes about like, it's like a women's sport, or, like soccer players are sissies, that kind of thing. Like, I thought I was clever, like, oh, come back and get a real sport. Like I was the guy who made those jokes. And, but I'd had some friends being a big Mariners and Seahawks fan. I had obviously then friends who are huge Sounders fans. And so they'd taken me to a couple of games, and I was starting right before I met her. Actually, it was actually the 2014 World Cup that being with all these friends and watching soccer and football, or watching baseball and football together, they were like, oh, we're watching the World Cup. And I was like, okay, I'll come watch too. And that World Cup, I really enjoyed. I was like, oh, this is a lot of fun. I remember specifically being really interested in DeAndre Yedlin because he was a Sounders player. And I remember going to a Sounders game and seeing him in person and being like, that is the fastest human being I've ever seen. Because young DeAndre Yedlin was a burner.
Faster than DK?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, DK Metcalf, the wide receiver for the freakish wide receiver for the Seahawks. So I'm still a huge Seahawks fan. Mariners, I'm kind of I've been in an abusive relationship with them for too long that I'm trying to move on. But then the Galaxy have now become I'm into the Seahawks, but like my passion is the Galaxy and the US team. Like soccer has become the predominant sport that I'm the most interested in and the most passionate about now.
He can probably tell you half the players on any team in the league. It's pretty impressive.
Oh yeah, no, that's awesome. But so do you guys watch it? So now, I mean, Amy, you got tattoos, so I mean, it's in your DNA. So do you guys watch it as a sport at a distance, or do you guys incorporate any of the beautiful play into life? That's what I do. Football again is part of my DNA too. I grew up in it. And do you guys do any incorporation of that, or is it just an event you guys go to?
Before I got pregnant, it was very much a like, this is a main part of our relationship, our friendships. It's, all day, every day, soccer madness or football madness. And I think then once we had a baby, everything went to the background except for him. And then as we've come more into our relationship with God and all of that, it's definitely still a big part, but it's not everything.
COVID kind of put a big damper on it because
everything in LA shut down.
Yeah, everything in LA shut down. And then it was basically down here, our like in-person social groups, the soccer supporters groups were like our biggest, the friends who would hang out with in person. And a lot of them are very COVID crazy. So it just is, it's hard to connect with them, especially like listening to the way that they talk about people that they're not talking about us necessarily, but the people that they're talking about would be associated with us, so people who aren't, religiously in love with wearing masks and that kind of thing. So to go spend time with them, it got a little bit strained and just wasn't quite as much fun to go be around them. And so then at the same time, the baby was born. And so then it was just we kind of ran out of time, but we're definitely like, we don't miss a game. We carve out time in our schedule. We rearrange events to make sure that we can watch the games. We're going to watch the US game tonight too. We've got that on our schedule to watch. So it's definitely something that we're very personally invested in, and we definitely care about and follow. I'm regularly following updates on the team and keeping track of the roster and all that kind of thing. But we've kind of lost a bit of that social part that we had before, which is a little disappointing. Yeah. It kind of sucks, and it's. My expectation is that it will probably be a long time, if ever, that we'll be able to take Eastwood to a game, just because of things like mandates and all that kind of thing that we're not going to subject our son to. And then that sucks. That's rough. Growing up going to baseball games with my dad was one of my favorite memories of all time, and it was very formative to who I was as a person. So I'd love for him to be able to participate in that, but we're in a changing world, and I guess maybe that won't be an option.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And that way you guys know up front, like football is part of my agenda to talk about some like libertarian ideas or secession and all that. And even though I'm wearing like a US soccer one, one day I'd like to have a Texas football like association where, I've been saying it for like over 10 years and over time, as I got in more into like the podcast world and listening to all ideas, it's just gotten stronger. And I just say that, Texas is going to win a World Cup before the United States does. And, and I say that also because that's the way I talk to my friends. I don't talk about politics straight up with friends and stuff because I can't, because I want to respect the relationship we have. But if I bring it up through sports, then they've never even heard of the idea of secession. But when I bring it up like this way, they're like, what? That can happen. I was like, sure, why not? Why couldn't Texas win the World Cup? Why not? I mean, sure, why not? And then so that's part of my agenda. But just so that way you guys know, if I bring up football a lot, that's what it is. But moving on a little bit, so you guys, the connection is through the Jason Stapleton show, and you had mentioned, Matt, that he was going through a transition into where he is now. But you guys have been there through that transition. How has that been? Because I mean, I think it's safe to say, like, you guys are riding together with him. I mean, that the story is there. Have there been tensions, or you ride with them, you trust them enough to, you know what I'm saying? Because I mean, that's the question, is like, so this is for both of you guys. I mean, how has that ride been with him?
I think it's been a lot easier for Matt than it's been for me. I tend to get very possessive mama bear over the people that I love. And so it was hard for me to not take things personal when we were being attacked, and to not stick up for Matt and Jason. And I had to realize that it wasn't really my place, that these people that were attacking us didn't matter. And half of them have come back to listening to us and asking for advice and paying us to be part of our network. And it took a little bit of time for me to trust the process, but I trusted Jason and I trust Matt endlessly. But so I came around. I don't know. How do you feel?
It was definitely it hasn't always been smooth. It hasn't always been easy, but what we've been able to really, we've got a clear vision, and it took a little while for that vision to come to kind of cohere, come together, and even now, even today, there's still a lot that we don't know about the future. We don't necessarily know exactly how everything's going to work, but it's been incredibly rewarding to number one, to have the I told you so factor, to be ahead of the curve on something, and then to have people, especially people who were very vehemently attacking us, to have them turn around and be like, you guys were right. I didn't, I was, that's obviously extremely gratifying whenever that happens. But
go.
But especially to see the tangible, genuine changes that the work that we're doing is having in people's lives, to listen to people talk about how, because of listening to us on the show, it transformed the way that they approach their work life, and they've taken on a second job, or they've quit their job altogether and started a side hustle, and now they've quadrupled their salary, or those types of stories. We get them all the time. And number one, to have the privilege to be able to just sit here at a desk in a bedroom in my house and just talk to people about stuff that's important to me, and to turn around and hear that is having a profound impact on people, that's changing their lives, it's just an incredible blessing. And it's something that really wasn't available to a lot of people prior to the last several years or decade or so. The world is changing really rapidly. So to be able to have that positive impact on people, that tells me that we're going in the right direction, that we're doing the right thing. And that makes it easier when we're going through a hard time, when there's like obstacles that, we don't know how this is going to be resolved. We don't know what we're going to do, but we know that we're doing the right thing, and that we are where we're supposed to be. So as long as we keep solving each individual problem in front of us, we know that the problems of tomorrow and the next day are going to be solved for themselves. And since we're in the right place, since we know that we're doing the right thing, it makes that process a lot easier.
No, I hear you. Then, Matt, you've mentioned on the Kingpilled, on your podcast, that you want to create an echo chamber of people that mostly agree with you, and sometimes in a way, a marriage is like that. And, there's a lot of value in that, because you want to be hanging around with people that are aligned with, what you're trying to do. But, I want to know how you guys, because you brought it up, Amy, how you guys deal with negative outside interference, because, that type of energy tries to penetrate and can cause sometimes tensions within y'all's own echo chamber or marriage. Can you guys speak to how you guys deal with that? How y'all's and it depends how personal you want to get, how you guys say, hey, how you guys deal with that, because that is your team. And, we're just talking about sports and all that, but, it's meant to be like that. Hey, this is how we come together and then we grow stronger, or this or that. Can you guys kind of speak to that a little bit?
I think for me, before the baby, it was a lot harder. And I think there was a lot more negativity in our relationship. And it was harder to let go of some of the outside forces. And now, like, as soon as we turn off our phones or turn off the computer, like, the most awesome person in the world is downstairs. And we get to go hang out with him. And he's got a great sense of humor. And so none of the other stuff matters. And for me, and I think this is probably the privilege of being a woman and the wife, is I trust him and just let him handle a lot of that stuff. And he's kind of like water off a duck's ass. He kind of just lets go of stuff a lot easier than I do. So I can let go, let God, and trust that he's got all the haters handled and all of that. And in the tensions within the company, we are able to kind of talk each other through situations, I think. And a lot of it can be like miscommunication just through text, because our entire company is online now. Jason lives in another state. We've seen him in person like 3 times this year. So anything business-wise, we are able to have each other's back. And I think that's a really beneficial thing when you have a married couple within a company. But it also, at the same time, is we're never off work, because one of us is always working.
That's one of the downsides of working from home is it's not all, peaches and cream. Like the fact that there's times where I genuinely miss and yearn for the days where I could get off work and clock out and get in my car and just let my brain go, drive home, listen to a podcast, a book on an audiobook or whatever, and get home and just put my feet up. And just, it was like, even if I'm like doing chores around the house or walking the dog or whatever, it's like work is gone. Work is at work, and I'll get back to it tomorrow. But for the rest of the night, our time is ours. We don't have that anymore. And we probably never really will again. And so that's also a huge difference in our personalities. Is he's a work to live and I'm a live to work. Other way around. Yeah.
I enjoy working constantly and he hates it. And I also, for me, have to, nurse, pump, do laundry, fold baby clothes, all of that stuff that I've taken on as my responsibility. So I'm working full time and, mothering full time and housekeeping full time and all of that and stuff. So at 11 o'clock at night, it might be my work time, and that drives him crazy.
Because I want to be able to have the boundaries. I want to be able to have our home and have our home be shielded from everything outside. I want to have our little like cocooned area kind of that's just us, just our time for just us. And that really what that is.
Amy, are you saying that you're more open borders? Is that what you're saying, Amy?
Really, it's just a matter of like that's something that we have to work for. Let's say when you have so thoroughly established yourself financially and in terms of the value that you've provided to the world and the extent to which you control the source of your own income, then you begin to earn luxuries like that. So we don't have to like, we may not get to leave work at work and then just have our own little oasis at home, but we also get to basically function on our own schedule. Mm-hmm. And we get to spend like any time we want, we can go hang out with our son. Even when we're in the middle of working, I can put down what I'm doing and I can go right over and hang out with him and go take him for a walk, go be able to experience him. And that's something that a lot of people don't get. Like most people don't get that with their children. are at work, or their children are at school, and for whatever reason they don't get to personally connect with them. So that's a huge privilege, and it's something that we definitely appreciate that. That's a good part about it. Yeah, that's something I would never trade. I'd never be able to go punch a clock for someone again. It just doesn't. It would make me insane. So ultimately, life is about the trade-offs, and all economic activity is just trade-offs, cost benefit analyses, and you decide that the costs are worth the benefits. And so for us, we've decided that the costs associated with working from home and living the lifestyle that we have are worth the benefits, which are primarily the time we get to spend with each other and with our son.
And how do you feel like you handle the negativity and outsiders, to bring us back to the actual question?
I'm someone who tends to really internalize negative emotion a lot. I stress about things, and I like externally I'm able to let things go, and especially like interpersonal things. It's like the things that I don't care about, I just don't care about at all. I can let them go right away. It's no problem at all. Then there's a few select things that I do care about, and I obsess about them, and I give myself an ulcer stressing and thinking about them all the time. So I ultimately, the way we tend to be is I tend to be very much kind of like the long range thinker, very kind of trapped in the future, and always kind of trying to imagine what the future is going to look like, and trying to come up with the best possible plan. And then Amy is very much she's very good at just being aware of details and every single thing that's going on around us at all times. So she keeps me from getting lost in the clouds, and then I keep her from getting too trapped to the ground. So we wind up balancing each other out like that really well. So ultimately, I think early on we struggled, especially when we first transitioned to working from home and working with Jason. I think we struggled with a lot of these new challenges, and there was a lot of difficult times, and having social groups that just kind of turned their backs on us and abandoned us was difficult. That was hard. But I don't know, it maybe sounds kind of a little cheesy or something, but like it really pulled us together. I think it united us and gave us kind of a united focus. And we got a little bit of a like us against the world sort of thing, where we're like, we're going to be successful just to prove you wrong. You just gave us extra fuel to the fire, so we're gonna make all of this happen just to spite you guys. Kind of that sort of dynamic was there as well.
Yeah. So it was, you speak a lot of on your podcast, Matt, about responsibility. And just by like flipping the word around, I saw that in my wife. I was like, hey, she's a responsible person. That's somebody I can definitely see myself with, because I felt that I was a responsible person. But, it really is just the ability to respond to situations, as they come, And Amy had said that sometimes the tensions come about because there's lack of communication sometimes. And I understand that, in football or in soccer, I played it since I was a kid, and I managed like, little teams and stuff like that, like beer league teams and stuff. And, you yell out, and you might hear, if you guys are close enough to the games, you'll hear it like, communicate, they'll yell it, the managers from this talk to each other, because those lines of communication, they penetrate that empty space where the ball can travel. So if you're communicating, those empty spaces get filled with the ideas that you're trying to have with each other. So no, Amy, I definitely agree, and yeah, it's about communicating, and a lot of people just don't do that, unfortunately, right? I mean, it's kind of sad that's probably one of the biggest things that happens to relationships. But it sounds like you guys definitely have your communication stuff going on. Does that sound about right? Kind of like that?
I'm an over communicator. Like, I constantly want feedback of what's happening. What are you doing? Here's what we're doing. Here's what, the baby and I are doing. How does that relate to you? And I think it probably makes Matt a little crazy. And you have to drag it out of him communicator, because he's constantly in his head planning what he's doing. And sometimes, I just need to know. And I thank his upbringing, because his parents have a fantastic relationship. And I think that being homeschooled and being raised in a gigantic family, like he had, like his siblings, when he said he was an only child, he just means at the time, because he's got 6 siblings now, 5 or 6 siblings. So his siblings are more than my entire family. I'm an only child. No, like I have a cousin now, but wasn't raised with cousin. And so I thank his upbringing for being kind of chaotic, because it kind of got him used to the chaos of communication. And so while we both have very different communication styles, he's very forgiving of mine. And I'm thankful of that. So I'm more forgiving of his as well. But
you respect each other's shortcomings, I guess, too, right? I mean, that's the way you got to do it. So no, that's awesome. What is y'all's current state of spirituality? I know you guys, the Kingpilled podcast has a lot of the religious tones in there, and Amy, you had spoken that you guys have been growing spiritually and, with the religion. How are you guys doing on that front?
We're very much, to be completely honest, we're very much a work in progress. We're, like I said, I grew up very devout and very, used to being very, like, where your whole life basically kind of revolved around the church. That's kind of how I grew up. And then throughout my 20s, as I drifted away from it, I went sort of the opposite direction, where I had no connection with the church at all. I didn't, I had no spiritual practices or anything like that. I was just kind of completely disconnected. And I wasn't hostile to the church. I didn't have hard feelings or anything like that. I just had no connection to it at all. And it was actually Amy that really kind of kickstarted something for me when I don't remember when it was a couple of years ago. She just started insisting that we have prayer together every night before we go to bed. And even when I didn't want to, and there's plenty of times where I was like, I didn't want to get up. I don't want to stop doing what I'm doing, whatever. And she just kept insisting. And that had an effect on me that kind of snapped me out of it a little bit. It was like, there's a responsibility that I have here that I haven't been upholding, or I haven't been fulfilling. And then through the course of kind of the journey that led me to starting to do my own podcast and studying politics, leading me back into religion and starting to kind of revamp the way that I see the world, we've both been becoming more and more convinced that we very much want to start going back to church. And I guess the body of thought that I've been drawn to has been Eastern Orthodoxy, Orthodox Christianity. And there's kind of a long story with how I got into it. My dad just so happened to get into it right at the same time. He and I both we were both studying into Orthodoxy at the same time without knowing it for 6-8 weeks, something like that. And so there was something that was a little serendipitous about that was meaningful to me. And so now we've both been talking about how we want to find a community. We want to find a church and start. I think part of it is when you have a kid, it makes you take those sort of things more seriously. Suddenly I'm like, I want him to grow up with a community of people. I want the support. I want that edification, and I want him to have a clear body of ideas that he can attach himself with, because I think that's really valuable. And then I've just been, to be completely honest, I've been having kind of a reconversion experience as I've been listening to this podcast called The Lord of Spirits, which is a couple of Orthodox priests. And I've mentioned it on my show, and a lot of other people started listening to it because of that. And I get messages from people all the time talking about how profoundly it's been impacting them. So I would say it's just a matter of time. Within the next year or so, I'm expecting that we're probably going to wind up joining an Orthodox church. And especially the way that the way the economy and the way that society is kind of trending, I think we're going to start seeing this a lot. I think a lot of people are kind of reconnecting with either their religious upbringing or just any sort of religious connection that they don't currently have. I think a lot of people are seeking that out. Just given the different things that have been going on in the world, I think it's making people want that sort of connection, that sort of community. and like a bigger picture as to why things are happening and where things are going. It gives a people that sort of security. So I don't remember what the question was.
Where we are spiritually.
Where we are spiritually. Oh yeah. So so I actually have there's an app that I downloaded. I can't remember the name of it now. It's an Eastern Orthodox. It's Iacona. It's Eikona for anyone that's interested. And it has about a 10-minute prayer and then a hymn or a chant that's associated with the saint of the day. So every morning when I get up to take the dog for a walk, I go for a walk and push the stroller with Eastwood and the dog. And we're usually out there for like an hour and a half or so. And I've starting the day out with that, playing that prayer. And just, it's like I want to expose Eastwood to it. I just want him to be to have those words fall over him and have that kind of cleansing and purifying and sanctifying effect on him. And I don't know, I don't have any story like, oh, things have radically changed and it's all better now or something like that. But just as an example, we've very consistently now for probably 18 months, maybe, we keep running into these situations where we're like, financially, I don't know how we're going to handle this thing. There's this new bill that came up, or there's this thing we need to do that we have to pay for, or there's something has arisen. And we're like, I have no idea how we're going to pay for that. I don't know where that money's going to come from. I don't know how we're going to do it. And magically, like literally money just appears, whether it's just randomly getting a check in the mail for something, or somehow getting some new opportunity to monetize something, or someone offers us money to do something, or it just keeps happening. That connection keeps happening. And it's happened enough times now that it's very clear that this isn't an accident, that there's something that's going on with that. So we definitely don't have for as much as I talk about it on the show, as a family, we don't have a lot of practices yet that we're engaged in. But to be honest, a lot of that is because I am trying to learn the practices. I want to know what they should be, so that I, as a father, can lead us together as a family through those things. So I'm learning those now so that we can begin to implement them.
I know for me personally, I struggle kind of like an imposter syndrome, because I know, well, I grew up socially Lutheran. So we would go to church. Mostly I would go because we got donuts afterwards. And
you kind of, I don't know what that means. Lutheran. I mean, so it sounds like it's kind of like chill.
Yeah, it's very chill. Like
okay.
The flask would get passed around in the back, and obviously not with the kids, but we would go to Bible studies and stuff like that. But you mostly just got to play with your friends. And the school that I went to for kindergarten through third grade was religious. We would go every Wednesday to church and learn all the Bible stories and stuff. But by 10, 12, I couldn't really tell you anymore, and went very much the opposite direction. Like I was a women's studies major in college, which can basically tell you how far the other direction that I went.
She was like a colored hair feminist.
Yeah. I started college conservative, and by the time I finished going, was a raging feminist. That's what the UC system, University of California system, will do to you. But as far as your question, I struggle to feel like it's my place to feel religious, because he grew up with this experience that was very fostering to that. And I feel like not a fault of my growing up or anything, just never grew up like that. So now to feel that, it just feels like I'm an imposter. So I'm struggling with that, and not feeling silly about it.
Yeah.
And so trying to kind of come to where he's at too, and come with him in that, because I know he's struggled with, I don't know how to put it necessarily, with what kind of relationship you want to have with God. Yeah. So we're having to kind of mold that together, and how much what we want to teach our son. And I don't want him to grow up in a world that doesn't have that kind of community.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Thanks for checking out the show. Be sure to support our efforts here by checking out palomaverdecbd.com. It is a online store that my wife and I run. And you get 25% off by using the promo code chingasos. And just in case you guys don't know, it's not in my nature to be interviewing people like this, but if you like what I'm putting out, just know that I'm on some CBD, you know. I take a gummy about an hour before I know I'm going to do the show. And about 20 minutes before the show, I'll take some drops, just takes the edge off, and then I just get into it. So if that's something that sounds like, oh, in your life, you do some other stuff that might benefit you to take the edge off before you get into some shit, try some CBD products. So go to palomaverdecbd.com, use the promo code chingasos, get 25% off anything in the store. Peace.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, no, like Matt said, it's a work in progress, and no, I thought it was a nice move of you, Amy. And it's funny how Matt said, kickstart, right? So as soon as he said kickstart, my brain went to football, and then I was like, okay, so how is Amy going to play this game here? How's she going to, what was the issue? Hey, they weren't communicating too much. Well, what did she do? She told him, hey, at night, let's pray, and that praying probably brought a bigger and a more dense form of communication between you guys. And yeah, now you definitely played football, and that's a good one right there. I think I know who wears the number 10, but yeah, no, that's awesome. To move on a little bit, I had some questions to kind of get through, you guys. Matt kind of brings up the Machiavellian, and man, to be honest, man, I've never read the book. I'm not a good reader, none of that stuff. And
my favorite part about Matt's podcast is he's now talking to other people about this stuff, because I love him, but I can't sit and be interested for that long. That I'm not interested in what he has to say. And I try, because I love him so much, I try to be interested in everything.
She does a good job.
So thankful for Steven and Andrew and Pete and everybody else.
That's funny. Yeah.
So they've given me an outlet so that she doesn't get trapped in a corner listening to me.
That's funny. I think Vanessa would kind of feel the same way about what she splits to her family and goes, she's like, oh, when are you having an interview? Okay. All right. She splits, so it's funny. But, the first time I ever heard of the word or whatever, Machiavelli or whatever, was like on the Tupac album. And I remember, and then when Matt started bringing it up more and all that, I didn't read the book or anything, but to me, it was kind of like, I guess you realize that there's a game, and you better play it before you get played. What aspects of that type of mindset do you guys bring to your everyday life? I mean, like I said, I tend to bring in football into the way, just like the way I gave you an example of, like, when he said kicks. I mean, I thought already, how is she setting up the footballers to do what, and how do you guys, Matt, or both you guys, like, set up your style of play? Is it that Machiavellian style, or like, so I guess I'm asking, the question is, what is your style of play in life? And when I say play, I mean the way you play the game.
Unfortunately for Eastwood, I've spent the last 14 years as a behaviorist. So BF Skinner and all of that. The one thing I try to tell, and I tell all of my clients about this, and I told Jason about it, and he took it into his own direction, is the 4 functions of behavior. So everybody acts for one or more of 4 reasons: attention, access, stimulation, and escape. So every single thing you do, like Matt's playing with a pen right now, and he's doing that for self-stimulation, and I'm doing it too when I'm not talking. And so unfortunately for Matt, and mostly for Eastwood, I tend to kind of use that subconsciously to get them to do what I want them to do, or what they need to be doing.
Nice.
But that's for me.
Both of us tend to view the world very much kind of in that way, that the things around us are, like, everything around us is a tool for a potential tool for getting what we want. And so we both tend to have what do you do with a tool? With a tool, when you have a tool, you manipulate it. So both of us we have the capacity to manipulate people. We both have that instinct, I guess. And then as part of that, then we also, we can be very goal oriented and less people oriented. So we can, if we wanted to, we could both be very manipulative toward reaching our goals. So like she said, so she has like a specific system that she's come up with that explains a lot about the world and helps her understand the world as she's relating to it. I'm the same way. I think in systems very much that way. So I come up with, or not, I don't mean I come up with them myself, but I come across different systems that can explain the world around me. So maybe like personality systems. I'm a big fan of the Myers-Briggs, like Jungian cognitive functions, to understand people's psychology. When using that, then I've been able to understand Jason. Like I understand how, once I figured out what type Jason was, I could tell how he was going to respond to certain things based on the way that he sees the world and the way that he communicates and the way he prioritizes things. So using that, then when I have that understanding, that frames the way that I'll relate to him, the way that I'll present a new idea to him, for example, or the way that we'll navigate a difficult problem. When I understand what makes people tick, then that helps me relate to them. And that can be kind of a manipulative thing. But I don't think manipulation is necessarily like it has a negative connotation, but I don't think that it has to. I think that we're always, every time we engage with other people, we're always manipulating them in some sense. We're trying to influence them to do and act in the way we want them to. And, you can do that for good reasons or evil reasons. That's up to you. But so I think we both tend to be of the psychological type that we view the world as a bunch of items and tools and stuff that we can use to program our world around us to get the things that we want. So I don't know if that necessarily answers what you were asking.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, because it's your style. It's your style of play. It's the way that you manage the players on the field, And it sounds like you guys are in sync on that style of play. Maybe Amy might have a little bit more flow, and you're more stats and this and that. But you guys definitely. If you're in agreement on that you guys look at a lot of stuff like that, then you guys are in sync on that side. And right.
So I was just gonna say, I think somehow by the grace of God, in the last 2.5 years since we moved to California, it's almost 3 years. 3 years now, actually, that I can count on probably one hand the amount of days that we haven't spent 24 hours a day together.
Yeah.
And that's, well, now I was working quite a bit in LA, but we've spent a lot of time together, and it has been, for the most part, very peaceful. And I think we're very lucky for that.
I think we've probably, since we got married, so it's been 3.5 years since we got married. And even before then, I think I could probably count on one hand the number of nights that we've spent apart from each other for one reason or another. If I was on a work trip or something like that. Maybe 3 times, something like that. So I mean, we've known each other now for 5+ years, and then in that time, like ever since we went from long distance to together, we've basically never been apart. And I would say probably fewer than 10 actual fights that we've ever had about anything. We just fight very different rarely.
Fighting
definitions
methods too. Well, not just definitions, but we fight very differently as well.
Yeah.
How does that go? How does that go?
I've been known to turn off the Find My Phone on my phone so that when I leave the house and drive away, he doesn't know where I'm at.
Nice.
So it's funny. Like normally, like she said earlier, she over communicates, and for me, you kind of have to drag it out of me. Which for me is really just that I'm stuck in my head and I'm just focused on other things, and I don't even realize how little I'm communicating. I don't realize that I'm not communicating. So typically when we have a fight, that's when I kind of realize, okay, here's something where we haven't communicated. So then I want to talk it out. I want to sit down and I want to talk out, work everything out, and come to a resolution. And she wants space. She wants to be left alone, and she'll just be gone for a while. So it's funny we have that. I didn't even really put that together until just now, that when we have a fight, we flip. But again, I mean, it's been in the 5+ years, it's been fewer than 10 times, I'd say, that we've we've like fought about anything. We just get along really well.
And then once again, it was probably just like lack of communication, right? It was just it was communication, right, that needed to happen. I mean, people trip out too. Like, I mean, we have a lot of similarities as far as like the stats, because Vanessa and I, we really don't get into fights either, you know. I mean, we just hang out and chill. I mean, it's pretty fun. I mean, we don't.
You can't run a business as a couple if you're constantly fighting.
No, we just, man, it's cool. We get along, and there's a communication and all that. So I mean, it's nice, and it's real. Like, some people might be like, oh, that's not the, you can't be with somebody. Yeah, you can. You can. So people should get into that a little bit. So you guys were talking about manipulation, and that leads into one of my questions here, because this is still kind of like I'm part of my agenda is to try to bring some liberty ideas to people that might have not heard it, like Latinos and stuff like that, because they're not really exposed to it too much. But what do you guys think is the average person on the street thinks libertarianism is, and what type of deception and the messaging is needed by libertarians to try to change the narrative? Because like you guys said, being manipulative doesn't have to be wrong if you're doing it for the right reasons. And maybe the libertarians need some deception in their game plan to try to change it up. So it's kind of a two-part question, and you guys can both go at it there.
Go ahead.
So I think that the average person, I've said this before on my show, that the reason that libertarianism has been unpopular isn't because people don't know about libertarians. It isn't that they're just, I've never heard of them. It's because they have heard about them and they don't like them. They don't. Whatever they've heard has been negative. They've gotten a negative impression. And then as a marketer, as someone involved in marketing, like a key principle of that is that your brand is your problem. It's your concern. It's up to you to ensure that your brand is what you want it to be. And if it's not, that's not the fault of the people who misunderstand you or who don't, who have the wrong idea of who you are. That's on you because you've sold yourself wrong. So I do think that it's up to libertarians to change that. And I think that probably the biggest thing that people, the biggest maybe misconception that people have about libertarians is that they're selfish, that they're self-oriented, that they only care about themselves, and that they see everybody else as expendable, basically, as like they're basically like, I want to benefit from all the institutions and stuff in society, but I don't want to have to contribute. I think that's the impression that people generally get of them, and from the left, they see them.
Hey, Matt, can I put a little pushback just a little bit, because we got when and the way you described it, you use different words, but the way you guys kind of described how you see the world as tools, you were kind of describing what, in a way, it was like what you were saying, that people might think libertarians are. Am I wrong to think that a little bit, or no?
What do you mean?
Well, right now, when you had, you said, oh, the misconception is that they think that libertarians only think of themselves and only maybe see the world as just like a game, or just like where they just use systems and stuff for their benefit. But that's, to me, that's okay. But you would kind of also, when you were talking about how you guys play the game a little bit, it's in that same type of game. Yeah. Is that, am I thinking wrong, or are you saying the same thing, or no?
I think that's accurate. That is the way that I am. And I think that's probably part of what's led me in that direction in the first place, was that I was already inclined to be that way. I think that in general, the types, like libertarianism as an ideology is very, very new relative to human history. And so it's still kind of working through the expansion process, getting past like the initial adopters. And so the initial adopters of it are the people who are going to be basically they're like the meme is that they're autistic, kind of, that they don't have social skills. And that's just kind of a nature of the ideology. The actual theory of the ideology is very nerdy. So it appeals to nerdy people, and those nerdy people are likely not going to have great social skills. So that's the misconception that's been developed, I think, about libertarians. I think that's how people see them. And I think that in large part, that's because that's the way that a lot of libertarians have communicated themselves. I think that's the way that when they are online talking to people, they
they want to be right. They want to be right about everything.
Right. And the approach that they take is they frame themselves as, well, I'm victimized by all of these people who are, violating my property rights or whatever. They'll take a very kind of heady approach to it and frame themselves as the victims. And then when everybody else sees them, they're like, well, you guys are you're like the selfish ones. You guys are the ones you're individualists. You just care about yourself as an individual. You don't care about the community. And so when you communicate as a libertarian, when someone communicates from that perspective, well, I'm an individual and I have these individual rights and this, that, and the third, you just reinforce that conception from other people. So then like you said, when libertarians just want to be right, okay, well, what's being right worth if in the process of being right, you turn people off from you? So I think that libertarians would do very well as they're attempting to maybe rehabilitate their image. I think they do very well to lead with value, lead with the value that they're generating to the world. And if you as a libertarian aren't generating value to the world, that's where you need to start. You shouldn't be trying to tell people about libertarianism until you've first lived out the ideology. Once you're embodying those values, then you can point back to like, look, I put my money where my mouth is. This is what it means to be a libertarian. I'm like someone like you. You've got a podcast and you've got a business where you're generating value to people, and you have a vision for that. We talked before about aligning interests. I think that's very, very powerful rhetoric. The goal of these ideas isn't to isolate and atomize people. It's to bring people together, and to bring people together with individual respect. That message doesn't get out. And so people, I think libertarians need to also grapple with the fact that there are powerful concerted interests who want them to have a bad reputation, who are looking for reasons to frame them in a negative light because it's politically advantageous for them. So then when libertarians volunteer for that by being autistic in the way that they communicate with other people, then that just it feeds into that issue. So that's where kind of the Machiavellian thing comes in, where you have to leave aside the right and wrong and evaluate things exactly as they are, and recognize that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if you're right, and it doesn't matter if your intentions are good, if the way that you convey yourself and the actual effects of what you do and say end up reflecting negatively on you.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah. And that's a little bit of what I'm trying to do with this podcast is, by just saying that I want Texas to win a World Cup, that's putting a big marker way in the future. Maybe not in my lifetime, maybe, but hey, anybody can fill up all that space of up to the future with these libertarian ideas, however you want. It's for anybody. Hey, I respect whatever you think of that. To me, I'm just putting a marker way out there in the front, and you can fill it in however you want, man. Like, but let's all agree that when Texas wins a World Cup, we're all gonna party badass. But I want to be respectful of y'all's time, and what I'd like to kind of get is you guys kind of spoke about the society or the community that you'd want Eastwood to grow up in, but that's him growing up. Can you guys paint the picture or the vision of yourselves growing old together? How does that look? And can you guys kind of give an optimistic kind of vision there for yourselves and how it might look for to the audience and something nice like that?
You go first. You go first.
It's hard for me to look that far in the future, because I'm just trying to thinking about what I'm getting him for Christmas, or what we are getting him for Christmas. That's the whole mom thing. What I'm getting him for Christmas, I'm putting his name on it. It's hard for me to see that far in the future. I don't want him to grow up anywhere where he can't easily communicate with the people around him, where he has to look around, where he has to just look at their eyes to understand how people feel. And as far as us, see, I can't even separate us growing old from him growing up, because that's all my mind focuses on now is him growing up, which I don't know if that's fair to Matt or not, I guess biologically, I'm focused on raising his child. So,
I think that's the natural way. This is a very natural dynamic. I think that our society has kind of moved in a direction that incentivizes men and women to act in really kind of unnatural ways. And I think it's very healthy and normal for men to be responsible for bearing the burden of the vision of the future, kind of, that the men are the sort of like the long range planning everything out on a broad scale, on a broad scope, and that women are much more naturally gifted in general for things like homemaking, for nurturing children, for raising them and teaching them and guiding them. And while the men are creating a protective shell around them, I think there's a very natural synergy between men and women, generally speaking, that's like that. So the vision that I have for us in the future is I want us to live somewhere remote, somewhere more rural, but not isolated, not completely alone.
I listen to far too many true crime podcasts to feel comfortable with too remote.
Yeah.
So
we'll see if you get far enough out, there's nobody there. So there's nobody there to commit the crime.
Then you end up on a whole different type of podcast.
Yeah. But definitely I'm fully prepared for the eventuality where we have to leave the United States altogether. Like I'm psychologically prepared for that as a possibility, but I don't want to. I would prefer to remain in the States. I love this is my home. This is where I want to be. But the most important thing to me is that as a family, we control our own destiny, that we aren't beholden to other people, and that we get to whatever we decide are our values. Even if those values change, I want us to be in control and to have the power to pursue those to the ultimate degree. And I want us to be safe and healthy from toxins, environmental toxins in the food, toxins in the water. I want us to be to be exposed to nature and be able to spend a lot of time in nature and away from a lot of the negative effects of technology today. So that's kind of the long range vision of where we're focused and where we're headed. And I think then again, as a man, it's my responsibility to think through those eventualities, to make that plan, and then to guide us through that process. And then as a woman, her responsibility is basically to manage the home, keep the home together, and bound as a unit moving in that direction. So my job is to plan the direction, and her job is to facilitate the process of getting there. And ultimately, I think a lot of people have a really negative perception. I'm sure your audience won't have this, but a lot of people have this negative perception about the idea of, well, women's responsibility is to raise the children. And they're kind of like, well, there aren't there higher callings. And I can't imagine a higher calling than that, especially if if women complain about the nature of the society, it's too patriarchal, or it's too this or too that, whatever their complaint is. If you want it to change, the best way to change it is through the children. Because if you teach the children, you're literally creating the future society. So when I, as a man, say that I think the best spot for my wife to be is at home raising our child, I'm saying I think her most important role is the most important role imaginable. And my role of protecting and forecasting and taking them into the future, that's a support role. I see the primary role is her as a mother with our son, and my role as in a support role is guiding us to a future place and time where we can all best grow and thrive within that. And I think that's a natural state of mankind, natural state of a family. And I mean, what I want is to be around people who feel the same way, who value those same things and are motivated the same way.
No, I hear you, man. Perfect. Yeah, man, I think you guys are definitely in sync and on the same page, and are writing a beautiful book together. So if you could plug in the wealth, power, and influence stuff, y'all's business stuff, do all the plugs you got to do, Matt, and anything you got, Amy, too, and and we'll start wrapping it up.
So why don't you do yours first?
I don't have anything. You don't have anything?
Okay. So all right, let me run through all these. So best place to get me personally would be my Twitter account @RealKingpilled. My podcast it's right now, it's just a YouTube channel. It's Kingpilled. That's where me and my co-host, we go live every Monday and Thursday, usually about 1 p.m. Pacific. And that podcast is basically talking about kind of the stuff we've been talking about through the latter half here about philosophy, religion, politics, that sort of thing. And then Wealth, Power, and Influence is it's a pod. You can get it on any podcatcher anywhere. You can also get it on YouTube. Each episode posts Monday morning. And then if you want to be a part of what we're doing with Wealth, Power, and Influence with Jason Stapleton, we just launched our new Nomad Network with an app that's on the App Store. So you can just look up Nomad Network on the App Store. And then if you want to join, you can go to it's my.nomadnetwork.app, and that'll get you the sign up spot so you can join the network. And our goal for that, it's a place for people who, it's primarily for digital entrepreneurs, but digital entrepreneur is a lot broader category than I think a lot of people realize. And I think we're moving into an age where basically anybody who's doing anything creative in any sense is going to be a digital entrepreneur. And so that's what we believe with that podcast is that liberty isn't something that you ask for. It's something that you create, and you create it by taking control of the source of your income, by building up rare and specialized skills, and then making that income mobile. And so that's what we're doing on that app. It's a community of people who all believe in that message and are all there to support each other. So it's not just a social network. It's a community, a tightly bound community of people who are trying to maximize their own human potential so that we can all collectively create the future together.
Yep. I say I don't have anything worth following, but I suppose that if you've made it this far, that you have some interest in marriage, kids, any of that. So that's all I do for fun now is research, parenting, motherhood, all of that. So I suppose if you wanted to hear anything that I have to say or have questions, on Twitter, it's _not your mom, or join the network. And I'm very prominent on there.
Perfect. Thank you guys for being on. I hope you guys felt that I respected your time, and we got some good stuff out there for the audience. And thank you for coming on.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun.
Cool, man. Peace.